welcome to International Dowsing Day 2023. I'm Susan Collins, and my buddy Grahame Gardner will now take over.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is in your part of the world. Welcome to the International Dowsing Day 2023 live stream. And we are joined today by some wonderful professional dowsers who join Hearts and Minds to bring you their dowsing knowledge. Each presenter is going to have about 10 minutes or so to share their knowledge with us. And we hope this will last just about an hour, and it's going to be a fun time. So let me introduce our panel tonight. We have Susan Spuhler from Westford, Massachusetts. Susan runs the Greater Boston Dowsers and also organizes the West Coast Dowsing Conference in Santa Cruz and the Flagstaff Dowsing Conference in Arizona, which will be happening October the 1st to the 7th this year?
The 4th to the 10th.
4th to the 10th. Thank you, Susan. I should know because I'm the keynote speaker at this. So details on that, you can find that on the webpage, which is dowsersouthwest.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, okay. And our next speaker, we have Jim Doyle, who's from Cambridge in England. Hi, Jim. Jim used to be an electronics engineer before he discovered the wonderful world of dowsing, and he's now an integrated energy healer. Then my colleague, my esteemed Canadian colleague, Susan Collins, who's currently doing all the behind-the-scenes technical stuff from Death Valley in California. Susan's going to be talking about dowsing for health. And then we have David Charman, who's from Arundel in West Sussex, who's a retired builder and now a dog walker, he says. David's been dowsing since 1998, and he's going to be talking about energy viewing, how he is able to see the energy around people and places and things. And then you'll have me talking about dowsing and labyrinths. I'm coming from Glasgow, Scotland, and yesterday, the first Saturday in May, is also World Labyrinth Day. And dowsing and labyrinths kind of go hand in glove. So I'll be sharing you some information about that. And finally, we have the wonderful Patrick MacManaway coming to us from Winooski in Vermont. Patrick's just back from his Earth Whispering tour of Australia, where he goes quite regularly. So he's going to be talking about some of his techniques for getting in tune with the Earth. So that's our panel. So first of all, let's hand over to Susan Spuhler, who's going to talk to us about the techniques for dowsing a water well. Susan, the floor is yours.
Please unmute.
Unmute.
There we go. Thank you.
Share screen, share sound. Okay, here we go. So yesterday we had Labyrinth Day here at my home. We built a Chartres labyrinth, and we blessed it yesterday for Labyrinth Day. And working, so it's going.
Happy International Dowsing Day from the Boston Dowsers. Thank you. Hi, Susan McNeill Spuhler here again. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to map dowse. Before I map dowse a property, when people are looking for a well site, I ask 10 questions, and you'll get those questions on the handout. Ask for potable water, drinkable water, that tastes good, that smells good, that's there year round, that's an appropriate depth, appropriate gallons per minute, easy for the well driller to get to, beneficial to all who drink it, is going in the correct direction, as going away from your septic system, and primary water. So, with those 10 questions, those 10 statements in mind, I then douse the property. Now I'm just going to use my fingers. I'm going to be pushing down on this to get a reaction. I'm going to go up the map. We get a reaction. Put a tick mark here. Tick mark here. Pushing my finger down. You get the same reaction with your L rod or your pendulum. Okay. So now, with each one of these marks, I push the ruler across the page. There's one spot, so I make a plus sign. Push it again. Another spot. Make a plus sign here. Another reaction, get a plus sign here. And get a plus sign here. So now what I'll do is I connect these. And now I ask, let's see, I probably should tell you which direction north is. North is this way. So now I can ask, is the water running in a northern direction? Yes. So I can say, push on my finger here, say, show me yes, show me no, and it releases. So is the water running to the north? I'm getting a yes on that. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here in the yard and I'm going to douse it using my L rods and my Y rod, and I'm going to use marker flags as well. These are marker flags. You can get them at your local hardware store. These are my trusty L rods, and these are my Y rods. I make my own dowsing tools out of polypropylene and Tygon tubing. And then these are actually a stainless steel rod that somebody made for me, but I make mine out of welding rods and copper tubing from the hardware store as well. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my L rods. I'm going to find the vein. We saw the vein on the sheet when I map dowsed it. So I'm going to walk and ask, because this is the area where on the map that we did map dowse. So I'm going to ask, show me the first edge of the water vein. I'm getting it right here. So now what I'll do is I'll take my flags, put them at my feet here and here. Now I'll ask for the other edge of the water vein, because basically it's like an underground river or stream, depending on the situation. And that's what I'm finding here in Westford, Massachusetts. Let's find the other edge. And that's here. So sometimes I'll stick my rods in the ground like that and put my rods here and here to get the other edge. So now what I'll do, I will take my Y rod and I'll walk the vein and I'll ask where along this water vein will be the best place to drill. That slapped right down. Try it again. Caught in my shirt. One more time. Here. So what I'll do is I'll put a flag here. And then I'll do what's called a triangulation. I'll approach it from this side to make sure I'm correct. Goes down. Goes down. Now what I'll do is I will take my surveyor's paint. You'll see the funny little ends on these. This is a Rust-Oleum paint, and this is a Krylon paint can holder. Slide it in. And what I do is I put a bullseye. I paint a dot where the flag is, and I put 2 concentric circles around that, because in the past, this was a really cute situation. I was putting flags out for a family, and I turn around and the little girl who lived at the house, she was walking up behind me holding all my flags. So we had to do it again, but it was cute. So that's how you douse a water well. Thank you. Oh, and before I forget, you want to know the depth and you want to know the gallons per minute. So what I do, sometimes I'll take my L rod and I'll pretend I have a half moon in front of me that has 0 to say 1,000 feet in front of me. And my L rod will tell me approximately, okay, it's less than 500. So I'll say this is 0 and this is 500. And then from there, I'll usually use my finger. I'll say 50, 75, 100, 125, 150, 175, 200. So I go 175, 180, 185, 175, 76, 77, 78, 178 feet. Gallons per minute. 5, 10, 15, 20, 5, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18. So 18 gallons per minute. That's how you determine your depth and your gallons per minute. I'm Susan McNeill Spuhler. I'm the co-director of the West Coast Dowser Conference, which is held in Santa Cruz, California. And this shirt is from Santa Cruz, California. And I'm also the co-director of the Flagstaff Dowser Conference, which is held in Flagstaff, Arizona. Hope you can come.
Wow, excellent, Susan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, so Susan's handout, well, we can't really share handouts in this presentation, but we will put them on the Facebook page after the event. Next we turn to Jim Doyle. Jim, somebody I haven't seen for many years, actually. Susan's waving.
I have to leave.
Oh yeah, Susan has to leave.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor and a pleasure to work with you folks. Take care.
Lovely seeing you, Susan. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So now let's turn to Jim Doyle from Cambridge, and Jim has a variety of clients. I know he uses visualization and heart-based self-awareness methods to enhance their natural healing ability and instill confidence. And Jim is also a Toastmaster, I believe. So Jim, tell us about your work, please.
Thank you, Graham. So I'm Jim Doyle, different light. I'm just checking my timing and everything. And I'm speaking about energetic grounding. So I'm going to go straight over to the slides, because energetic grounding, you might say, what on earth is it? So 1 second. Here we go. Right. And slide to that screen there. It's the technology, wonderful thing. Now, so I trained in energy healing and I do ancestral work, etc., 20 odd years ago. And way back, I realized in my 20s, I realized I was a natural healer. So I've been energetically connected for a long time, as it were, but I've only been dowsing for about 20 years, not to the level of many people. And of course, not all dowsers are equal. So energetic grounding, what is it and why is it important? Well, let me explain. The way I perceive things and when I work with my clients is that we have an energy body, which is similar size and shape to our physical body. And when all is perfectly wonderful in our life and we're all balanced and everything's going smoothly and we're confident and probably quite healthy, etc., then those are in alignment. But you have all of those. You have presence, you are healthy, believe in yourself, trust yourself, ability to focus and be fully connected. And it's the fully connected bit that is very relevant here. So you're fully in your body, but just like that, okay? So teenage girl, and she's fully in the moment, totally balanced. Everything is working perfectly until she falls off. Now, take a normal humanoid, male, female, doesn't matter, okay? When things happen, when we have experiences which scare us, traumatic, if you like, an accident, somebody dies, that kind of thing, close to us, what happens is that we tend to go slightly out of our body. Now, I know this may sound weird, but I am in a dowsing group, so that's okay. And so when we have a trauma or something scary happens to us, we energetically react by retreating from the scary stuff out there. And the first thing we do is retreat from our hands and our feet, hence they're highlighted on the slide. And that usually results in peripheral neuropathy or cold hands, cold feet. It's as simple as that, yeah? Now, it's all about trauma. Like I said, accidents, fright, surgery, family death, ancestral, geopathic stress, you name it. There are all kinds of things, from being bullied at school, all kinds of financial issues, being made redundant. All of those can give us enough of a shock, or even a minor case of PTSD. And we get into that situation. So again, we get the lack of focus. We can be a bit fearful, increased electrosensitivity in some cases, most definitely, if it's a severe case of being out of the body, and who knows what else. But unable to dowse properly is the main one, which is what I'm bringing here this evening. Because when we're dowsing, what we're relying on is our energetic connection to being grounded to the earth, and also, if you like, the flow of energy or electricity or whatever you want to call it, through our arms, to our indicator, whether we're doing fingers and thumbs or Y rods or pendulums or whatever. It doesn't actually matter. If we're not fully present in our dowsing, and to the point where our body is our point of reference to the earth, and from that point we're connecting to everything around us. If our energy isn't flowing properly, then we are not likely to be dowsing correctly. An example was, and if this person's listening, I can't remember their name, it's years ago, so my apologies, but it was interesting at the time. I was helping with a group of dowsers. I was at the end with this new person, following an earth energy line. So I was twisting and turning, going around a site on the edge of a town. But I was with this person, and they're following the line correctly, but they were turning about 2 meters before the point where everybody else had turned. So they're going this way, and they turn here, but the other people had turned about 2 meters away instead, and then around the other way. And I pointed this out to them and said, it's like you're sensing from 2 meters in front of you. And they said, oh yeah, that makes sense, because when I drive my car, I feel like I'm out at the front of the bonnet of the car. So, or the hood for our American audience. So that's an example of that. So cold hands, cold feet, and the implications of that can have a ripple through your life in lots of different ways. For example, an executive who shakes hands with somebody, the executive's got cold hands, and people sort of recoil. It's not a good start to a meeting. So how do you do it, and what can you do about it? First of all, if you're having dowsing problems and or you have cold hands, maybe cold feet, it's not necessarily guaranteed to be energetically ungrounded or partly out of your body. So you need to establish that that is true. Yeah, and having established that it is true, then you need to obviously correct the imbalance in some way, review the progress, and have greater self-awareness. So how do you actually get to the point of being sure that you've got some kind of past stuff? Not the details are irrelevant. It's the effect on you that we're talking about. So I would say one of the best ways is to use a capable dowser. And I say capable, not all dowsers are equal. For example, I'm not near as good at dowsing for water as Susan has just demonstrated. So, and I'm not very good at finding things, but I'm very good at finding lots of other things. So you need to find the right person for the job who may be able to work with you distantly or work with a pendulum and say the energy, say along your arm here is not as high as it is up here. And by the way, what you can also do is if you put your hand, say close to your face about 1 inch away, you can feel some warmth. You can do the same through your clothing on here. And just if you go down your arm, doesn't matter which one or which direction you go down your arm, and if you find a change, a drop off in the energy in towards the end of your arm, ignore your fingers. But if say you're warm down to your elbow and colder along there, then quite likely that is what is going on. Your life force is not fully there. Okay, now, so that's what you can do. And BritishDowsers.org and the American group is Dowsers.org. You will find registered dowsers on there. And again, you have to make your selection. So Qigong or Tai Chi. Now, this is about not just lovely slow motions. It's about being aware of your body and understanding, feeling what's going on. It's about the feeling that's crucially important. And you're feeling into every joint and every muscle, every part of your body, nice and slowly. And it's about the energy and the thought behind it. I did some Qigong training during my energy healing training. And sometimes that was the middle of winter pre-dawn, out in the frosty grass, in our bare feet, that brings you into your body and brings you paying attention to what is actually going on. And that's part of the self-awareness. Meditation may help, but won't necessarily get you back in your body. So you, or an specialist energy healer. I classify myself as one. There are others. And what I suggest you can do is, again, like dowsers, not all energy healers are equal. Some will get it, some won't. Some I speak to don't quite get it from the perspective that I do, bringing it into the dowsing and how important it is. So I qualify myself as being a specialist on there, details later on. But the whole objective is to get you back to being in balance, perfectly A-OK. So a quick summary. I'm rapidly running towards my 10 minutes. You've got it already. You need to be fully in your body, perfectly connected, ideally to the earth and through your hands to be fully capable of dowsing properly. This is what I believe, and certainly this particular lack of that, or being slightly traumatized or out of the body, has major implications in terms of hands and feet, and lots of other issues as well, opening up to sensitivities. And those are my contact details, but nice and easy. On the last slide, QR code, 21st century, get your mobile out and it'll take you straight to my calendar link where if you'd like to have a chat about further issues on there, just be specific. And let's have a 30-minute chat and see if I can be of assistance to you or point you in the right direction. Graham, over to you.
Wow, thanks, Jim. Very appreciative of your timekeeping there, and also the QR code. Nice to see somebody's in the 21st century.
Thank you.
And it works. Very good. I did it.
There you go. Susan's just done it.
Thank you.
So now I hand the table over to my esteemed colleague, Susan Collins. Susan is a past president of the Canadian Society of Dowsers, internationally acclaimed author, keynote speaker, and workshop leader with a dynamic professional practice. I'm reading this off her notes here. She uses dowsing to detect and transform non-beneficial energy patterns and has led workshops and presented at conferences across North America, the UK, Italy, Japan, and the Middle East, and is also an ordained metaphysical minister. Susan, over to you.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen right here. I can only tell my story. I'm going to just hide the meeting controls here, hide floating meeting controls. I can only tell my story. So I shall in my 10 minutes, which Graham will tell me, no doubt. That's my mother. She died at 102, and she certainly taught me a lot about living and dying. And one of the things that I remember she said, because she said she wanted to die, but she didn't know how to give up. So finally she gave up. And I said she could, right? I said she could. The other thing that happened this morning while I was dialing in is that our old buddy Ivan McBeth was present. And coincidentally, when my mother died, I saw Ivan explaining the universe to my mother. So I appreciate that very much. And Patrick might have more to say about Ivan as well. The message here being that we all persist in whatever body form there is. So some of you have met me before, and Graham has described. I'm also known as Water Woman, carrier of the sacred water. And then there's Graham in there, my buddy, carrier of the sacred fire. So we've had many adventures. I've studied in the North American native tradition with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in the Celtic tradition, Kabbalistic, and I'm an ordained minister. By law, I must say my religion is metaphysics, which I love. So how did we all get here? For me, I was clairsentient, and I was afraid of the dark till I was 45, had a big corporate career. And then in 1982, 41 years ago, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. My hands were claws for 23 years. I was told there was no cure, and the doctors just wanted to slice me up and give me heavy drugs. And that was really what pushed me into the dowsing and what has pushed me into health. And that is continues to be my passion. One thing I found along the way is that the autoimmune disorders can be the self not recognizing the self. So it's hugely important to have some self-examination. Who are we? Why are we here? For me, healing comes through service, and that's again, this is the Coles notes of everything. Self-healing comes in service to other people. But how do we, let's, again, just moving straight into it. How do we, for me, I was inflamed, rheumatoid arthritis. I'm going to back up slightly here and say that what I am calling in from an oasis in Death Valley. And I thought, what a great metaphor that in the planet, in the real world and where we are, there is going to be an oasis that you either find or create. So I'm actually in a natural oasis, but I have been creating my own oasis through all these practices, including the physical practice. So dosing is not just a spiritual practice. The biggest message we can do, and Jim is just saying this, is to get into our bodies, to be fully in our bodies so that we can do the spiritual practice and do the service. So as I age, as we all do, every once in a while, things just go downhill physically for me. And it's a matter of like rebuilding and recreating what we have. So I've been working with a personal trainer, and one of my training goals, he's just a regular guy, but I said my training goal was levitation, which he looked at me, had the wisdom not to laugh, but levitation. So I'm applying levitation to lifting weights. And at this point, I'm already lifting on some of the machines, lifting more weight than any woman he's ever trained of any age. So as I'm in there using my body, I am using all our spiritual dosing practices, levitation, knowing that matter is an illusion, and applying that within the body. So that's, I call it reverse aging. And since many of us have hearing aids or whatever we have, it's augmented reverse aging. So we take science, we take medical, and we integrate it. It's an integrated practice, not just a spiritual practice. Okay, that being said, whatever your symptoms are, a lot of medicine treats the symptoms, but let's find the source of the symptoms. So when you're doing this, you can think of your issue, whatever that is, and we all have them, and ask if the source of the symptom relating to your issue, is it within a physical domain, a mental domain, an emotional domain, spiritual or energetic? A lot of this, a lot of our stuff is if you fall down and break your leg, it's a physical domain. If it's a mental domain, you're so worried about what's going to happen, it makes yourself sick. If it's an emotional domain, your heart's sick perhaps, and your body ceases to function. Spiritual can be as if for some folk who have come into a strong religious background, they feel like God can't forgive them for whatever they've done. Then the energetic domain is very interesting. And that's where like a lot of the play is that we do as dosers is, we call them ghosts or aliens or whatever we call them. So figure out, check the source of your symptoms, and also what time frame. Like, where did this symptom begin? Was it in the past? So just a quick example, for one woman who kept waking up every night, every 3 hours, we found the source of the symptom was when she was 3 years old and afraid of wetting the bed. So we identified the symptom. We identified the source, and we're able to deal with that. So where is it? Is it in the future? Does it come from worrying? So what's the time frame? And what is the dimension that the symptoms come from, the source of the symptom? And I use the word standard dimension, which is basically the 4 dimensions we're in. Interesting, always when we're on Zoom and Facebook and YouTube, we are purely in an electromagnetic dimension with each other. But sometimes the other dimensions come in from the 11 that quantum physics have identified. So figure out, this is all dosed, and we presume you know how to dose. What's the dimensional source? And then reality. Again, what is reality? The standard reality. As dosers, we have an expanded reality. But if things are coming in from another reality, then that leads to a whole new set of questions, which we won't have time to do in here, but just check for that. And then frequencies. As we know, everything's frequency. And I know some folks talk about higher frequencies as if they're a good thing. Don't assume a higher frequency is a good thing. Our brains, our bodies, the earth is based on lower frequencies. So just check that out. And I'm sorry you can't see this, but let me read it. Release the cellular memory of past and this life injuries and harms. And the images, you know, you die and then you're reborn, and animals and humans and all the rest of it. Release the cellular memory, because and certainly in this lifetime, hurts and harms get kind of embedded in our cells and are reproduced that way. So self-healing, disconnect the faulty blueprint. And the few questions we've just looked at will help you disconnect the faulty, identify the faulty blueprint, and then with dosing, disconnect it. I use a protocol, I'll send you that after. So we disconnect the old and create and maintain a healthy blueprint. So it's, you know, it sounds complicated, but it's extremely easy. We want to repair our cell biology. So I invite you to dose to see if your cell biology needs correction. Are your cell repair and maintenance functions fully operational? And then always integrate changes at the appropriate rate, because we don't want it to come in too fast. You know, if we cleanse, you know, part of the microbiome, we don't want to be in the bathroom for the next 2 hours. We want to release non-beneficial microbiome or whatever it is at the most appropriate rate. Okay, whole new topic here. This is the neuroplasticity of the brain. And this is kind of the mental thing. Neuroplasticity means that the brain can rewire itself. So what you think about wires together. And that's how we create our reality, neuroplasticity. Dosing accesses traumatic memories stored in the amygdala. So this is another aspect of the subconscious. Dosing allows us to go into the subconscious, the superconscious, the conscious, and dosing can identify that traumatic memory, which, you know, our conscious minds don't remember. Like talking about it doesn't necessarily help. If you dose, what is the source of my fear of whatever it is, and go back, is there a hidden memory? What time frame does it come? And see if you can pinpoint where it happened. And often we are frightened as children, but when you pull it out as an adult, you go, oh, that's not so bad. I can deal with that. Once you bring the trigger to your conscious mind, you can eliminate it. And everything, and this is for yourself and with your clients, is compassionate detachment. We don't take on the problem of anybody, but we see perhaps there is a problem. We see no more fear. It's a fabulous thing. So I use this dosing protocol, and if you send me an email, susan@doser.ca, I'll send it to you. I give it out to everybody. I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but before I dose, I always balance my physical body. I connect with myself. First thing, I connect with my human body for my good health. Second thing, I connect with the intelligent and beneficial energies of nature. Then I go into the divine source and spirit and all the rest of it. But we need to be in our bodies. This is the platform. This is the meat package we're in. We need to respect it and be in it so we can move on. Forgiveness is huge. Clear yourself of non-beneficial energies, maximizing the energy field, seeking permission to dose. This keeps us safe. All of this stuff keeps us safe and accurate. I developed the protocol based on my teachers, many teachers, and some of them are in this call. Thank you very much. But it's taking from every source that you have. Take what makes sense to you and then integrate it into your own practice. No one person can tell you what to do or how to do it, but take everything that you can and integrate that the best way that you can. Dosing is the easy part. And I'm sure everybody on the call knows how to do that. And then create an ongoing energy matrix, I use the word, or ongoing energy system, so that your symptoms, you know, we use the example of cleaning up your microbiome. You don't want to do it in one instant. You want to do it at the appropriate rate. Integrate the learning, integrate it into your body, and have it take effect at the appropriate rate. Because as our cell biology reproduces, it doesn't all happen in one instant. So assimilate the best way that you can. Always at the end of your dosing session, disconnect. I had an email earlier today, somebody saying, oh, when I work with the rods, I get tired. And that happens if you particularly if you don't disconnect from the energy. So there should be an opening, a middle, and an end, so the disconnecting. I also thank the energies that I've been working with, and then communicating our results appropriately is always a big thing. Anyway, that's my protocol. You may have it already. I'm happy to send it out again. I've written a ton of books, and the Get Healthy book here is the last one. I'm not writing anymore because I have nothing else to say. Everything is in the Get Healthy book, and then there's a lot of other books as well. And they're on Amazon, so you can get them on Prime in your own country, or from me. Get Healthy, yep. So that's me, dowser.ca. And I am honored. Grahame and I have been partners in internationaldosers.org for about a million years, I think.
Since 2014, it says on the back of my shirt.
Oh, okay, I've got one on too. You can't see it. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Susan. We ran over slightly there, but we'll let you off.
Okay.
So Dave Charman is from Arundel in West Sussex and a member of the Sussex Dowsers. Now, Dave, I'm really intrigued to find out about energy viewing. So tell us what it is and how you came to discover that you could do it.
Energy viewing is the ability to be able to see the energy of just about anything. And you can look inside of trees or people, pets. I've even used it on a car once or twice, which was a bit odd. But the whole thing's a little bit odd. But it's one of these things that everybody can do. So most of you listening will know about those strange grainy colors that you can see in your mind's eye when you're meditating, or you've got your eyes shut, just being relaxed. You get kind of grainy colors drifting across or stationary. So if you can do that, you're already energy viewing. Mastering it is training yourself to be able to focus where you want to look. Okay. But it started in the middle of a martial art class. I had my hands back to back with my opponents. It was a Tai Chi class. Because I had contact, didn't need to see him. It was a set piece. I was supposed to be anticipating how he was going to hit me. And I shut my eyes because I had contact. I didn't need to see him. And got this immediate, really strong picture in my mind's eye of his heart. And of course, when that sort of thing happens noticeably for the first time, you freeze. And because I was where I was, I got slapped because that's what he was supposed to be doing. But when I managed to speak to him and plucked up the courage 3 weeks later, I could get in the ring and spar with him, but talk to him about that, totally out of my comfort zone back then. When I asked him about it and described the picture that I saw, he said, well, that describes my heart condition exactly. So then I had to kind of take a big step back, forget everything that I thought I knew about life and reassess.
So do you just see this in your mind's eye, or can you see it with your eyes open, like a field around people?
My son has the ability because I found that I could do this in the martial art class, and then I spent 6 months training myself to be able to access it anywhere. And I was then sitting looking at a crystal on the table and trying to see the radiation from the crystal. And my son walked in and he said, "What are you doing, Dad?" And so I explained, and well, I kind of cursed when he walked in because I just managed to hold the radiation through a blink, because you retune how you look, but then as soon as you blink, you revert back to your normal vision and it will go away. But I held it through a couple of blinks, and then he walked in. And so I explained what I was doing, and he looked at the crystal, went like that. I said, "That's brilliant, Dad, because I've always wanted to know where all these little wiggly lines coming off the crystal go to." And I nearly said, go to bed, because that was a bit past where I got to. And that's something that he had always been able to do. So then we learnt energy viewing together. He was 7 at the time, and it became our game. We would go out and look inside of trees at what was happening inside of trees, and chasing the elementals around and changing the crystal, the energy of stones and crystals just for the hell of it. And back then we didn't know better than to not put it back again. And so we had all sorts of games and fun. And it didn't
So
really...
is it different for different people? Do people see different things?
The only time it varies is if you are looking at certain foods, and some people have the ability to be able to digest certain types of foods. They're genetically designed, or the biome is, the gut biome is probably balanced and they can digest certain foods, whereas other people, they're genetically designed to eat different types of food, or their gut biome isn't balanced, so they can't. But when you look at the different types of food, something that I can digest and will do me good might be yellow, green, or blue. They might get a different color because they can't digest it. And that is the only variation. So if I had half a dozen people all looking into, and you don't really, well, I don't normally teach people to start looking on the outside of a person. I teach them to look inside of a person. So you can see someone's headache, or you can see arthritis or thyroid problems or irritable bowel. They all have a different frequency, and they all appear as a different color. They all have their kind of energy signature. And that has repeated over 25 years sufficiently for me to detail it. Okay. And I'm
So
not really
how do you prepare to do it? Is there a specific protocol you have to go through?
These days I breathe in and close my eyes.
Okay.
And that's it. I have taught 5-year-olds how to do this, and normally they can access their screen and see inside of someone in about 4 or 5 minutes, and usually better than I can. Older people have all sorts of programs in place which tell them that they can't or shouldn't or mustn't, for all these various reasons. They can take longer. Once or twice I don't succeed at all, but normally on a one-to-one basis, I can get, I mean, I do at these mind, body, spirit fairs. I have total strangers come in and they ask what's wrong. And I'm not a healer. I don't class myself as a healer. I class myself as a teacher, right? So I just teach people how to heal themselves. So the total stranger will sit down with me and I will go through the basic: shut your eyes, breathe, nice deep breaths, make sure you're relaxed, get a sensation of your eyes and let that sensation drift up into your forehead. You can't force it, you just have to let it drift. And there, with your eyes shut, you look. So the whole thing is not a visualization technique, is actually seeing. You're actually looking inside of another person, or inside of a pet, or inside of a tree. Which makes it, you can't misdirect with it. What you see is what you've got. So if I had 6 people all looking inside of a 7th person, provided they're looking in the same place, they will all see exactly the same energy signature, which will be the same sort of shape and color.
So do you feel this technique is completely safe? Are there any dangers that people need to be aware of?
Well, I've been doing it for 25 years, and the only dodgy incident was when I was looking at what was creating a crop circle. And it was, so I went into the ground to view this. It was on a impervious layer, water was laying on top of that. There was an aquifer type, but there was a hole in the impervious layer and the water was corkscrewing down through the hole, sucking energy above it and creating this crop circle. But the whole vortex of energy going down, being pulled by the water, was so strong that I got caught up in it and had this, well, I was being pulled away from my body, which was a horrendous experience. But if anybody, does do that, just remember, click your heels together 3 times and say there's no place like home. Because as soon as you do something physical, you're back in your body again. But the whole, if you're working with someone and they are in close to you within your aura, then there's hardly any risk of it. But if you're working with someone further away or around the other side of the world, you're no longer in your body. You've jumped out and you're having an out-of-body experience. So it's something that you can practice very slowly. You can start off with a tree. The energy inside of a tree, this time of year, on a nice warm spring day, you should see a flow of energy going up through the trunk. All right. So you can put your hand on the tree and ask to go in and see it. So you allow that screen to go into the tree. And you should see energy movement. Deciduous trees, not so much with the evergreen, that's much slower, but the deciduous trees, you get quite a flow of energy. But then if you take a few steps back and do the same thing, then you're jumping out of body. So you've got a picture, you've made contact with the tree, and then you can kind of jump out of body and into the tree, and should be able to see the same image. But just be careful of the moving ones. The little round kind of nasty coloured reds and browns, just avoid them.
So yeah, okay. So I can see it's a many-layered subject. This people do need to.
A huge subject.
Yeah. So
which is why
approach with
10
caution.
minutes. Well, provided you just don't try to jump too far or take a step too far to start with, then
yeah,
I've never had any real nasties. And I've done
okay, well, I
all
know you've
sorts
got a
of-
handout to that we'll put up on the page after this, which has got a lot of links that people can go and find out a bit more about Dave and what he does and about energy viewing. So Dave, thank you very much for sharing that.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Who's next? Oh, it's me, right. So yeah, if you don't know me, I'm Grahame Gardner. I'm a professional dowser and geomancer. I'm based in Glasgow. I specialize in house healing work and also creating sacred space. And I have a particular fondness for labyrinths. And since yesterday was World Labyrinth Day, which is always the first Saturday in May, I went and walked a labyrinth. So I'm going to share with you some of the secrets of working with labyrinths. And labyrinths and dowsing go kind of hand in hand because they have a very particular energy signature that is common to a lot of sacred spaces. So let me just get my screen share going here. We want this one. Okay. Okay, so just go through this very quickly. I'll give you a bit of the history of labyrinths here. The basic classical form, which you're the most familiar with, we have a 3-circuit, we have a 7-circuit, also called decretin, and here's a 15-circuit example. You get some variations on this, like here's a concentric one that's easy to draw with a set of compasses, and you can have a larger central area very easily with that. Other variations, we have a curious one called the Chakravyuha or Hecate. The Chakravyuha term comes from the Indian sacred text, the Mahabharata, where this is described as a battle formation for cavalry. Not quite sure how they would manage that on the horses, but it's an interesting shape with a spiral center. In Sweden and a lot of the Baltic countries around the Baltic Sea, you have this form known as the Baltic wheel, where you have an extra escape lane, if you like, from the center. So these are very good for long lines of people doing ceremony or, you know, just labyrinth dancing going through, so they don't have to turn around and go back the way they came. In Western United States, the native people there produce this pattern called the man in the maze, which is very popular in these basket weave designs. So there's all sorts of variations you can have. When the Romans came along, they introduced this square formation because they wanted to build them onto mosaic floors, and it's easier for that. And this is, you have this interesting 4 quarters development where you walk the inner section and then the outer section of each section in sequence. And over the years, this evolved until we get to the acme of the labyrinth, if you like, which is the one in Chartres Cathedral, which is an 11-circuit labyrinth. And again, you walk the inner circuits first in all 4 segments here, and then you walk the outer circuits before you get to the goal. And this is the only one of its type remaining. There used to be more medieval labyrinths, but most of them were torn up. And we have the 6-petal form in the center here. And these little cogs around the outside are called lunations because it's thought that they relate to the cycle of the moon. But because of this cross shape and the fact that it's in Chartres Cathedral, this is probably the most popular labyrinth being built today. It's very popular with Christian organizations. But I'm more of a sort of down to earth kind of guy. I like the classical, the Cretan one. And the design of this probably goes back about 5,000 years. So here's some examples of rock carvings from Kilmartin in Scotland. And you can just about see these cup and ring marks, beginning to look a bit like labyrinths here. Here's another couple from the Cocknow Stone. This is just outside Glasgow, largest piece of rock art in Scotland. And here's a couple of examples from Galicia in Spain. And on this top one, you can certainly see the labyrinth formation just beginning to develop here. So it's possible that these were the earliest examples of it. However, on the plains of Nazca in Peru, where you have all these petroglyphs walked in the desert floor, there is this wonderful example of a 3-circuit labyrinth. And again, you have this winding path, and then you have the fast exit path. And this again is so you can have processions of people walking it. And the secret to why the labyrinth is almost universal in all cultures around the world comes down to this seed pattern. This is how you draw a 7-circuit labyrinth. So you have this cross and you have L brackets in the corners, and then you have a little dot each corner. And you start your drawing at the top center, and you can go left or right. So here we're going right. So you see we're just doing this, going from the top into the next point, and then we connect the next vacant point to the next dot, and then we go back and we do the same. And then I go back and I do the same. And you can see if my pointer is almost moving in a circle here, or a spiral perhaps, I'm just lifting off the page to go back and connect the other dots. And then we have our Cretan labyrinth. And you can do it the other way as well. Here we go right, left to left, left to right, right to left, left to right. Either works. So that produces our labyrinth. This is the form you saw at the start. This is a snow labyrinth I walked in my back garden. You have to know what you're doing here because you're just walking the path, you're not walking the walls. And this is the pattern that's called Ariadne's thread, after the legend of Theseus and the Minotaur, when Ariadne had this golden clue of thread that she gave the end to Theseus, and he carried it into the labyrinth so he could find his way back out again. Here's some more seed patterns. This is a 3-circuit on the left, and this one's an 11-circuit, and this one's a 15-circuit on the right. And you make the larger ones just by adding extra L brackets in the corners. So there's an extra 3 here, there's an extra 2 here. And it's very easy to construct large labyrinths using this. Now, dowsers love labyrinths because they have this energetic signature that's very similar to stone circles and what you find in churches. You have these rising sources of water, which we call a blind spring in Britain, or they call a water dome in the States. And this is where you have primary water, this water that's formed very deep in the earth, being forced up under pressure, and it doesn't get to the surface because maybe there's a layer of clay or a layer of rock or something. So it spreads out into these little sort of spiderweb patterns. Here we are looking at a plan view, and this is looking from the side, if you like. So there can be different levels of water running out in different directions. And this is a very energetic form of water. And if you have L rods over these, typically they will start doing a helicopter 360-degree movement. And this is what we call a power center. This is where you find energy lays, which seem to terminate and originate at these blind springs. So here's a Dow's labyrinth with 3 energy lays. And also you can see the extent of the water dome. If you walk out from the center, asking for the edge of the dome, this is where your rods will cross. This is the meeting of the yin and the yang. So it's a balance point of energies, and it's what we call a power center. Good place to construct your sacred space. Labyrinths seem to attract this energy pattern. Even if there isn't one there, the labyrinth will eventually develop this same energy signature, as I'm about to show you with this one. This is a labyrinth I made in Edinburgh. This is for the Edinburgh University. And this is George Square Gardens, which is in the center of the university. And the chaplaincy center there wanted a permanent shark replica labyrinth. So originally it was going to be in this corner. And I had dowsed, there was this energy lay running roughly north-south in this direction here. And there's a nice little blind spring, so it was a good power center. However, the architect didn't like it because it wasn't flat enough. So he wanted me to put it over in this corner. And I couldn't really find a good enough power center there, but there was an energy lay running sort of east to west-ish. So I decided to site it on that, and I knew that the labyrinth would sort itself out eventually. Now, one of the things we do when we're siting a sacred site as geomancers is we try and find connections to the local landscape. So it might be a significant alignment to a sunset or sunrise or something like that. So I start by taking a panorama. So here's a panorama I did of the square, and you can see there's buildings all around it, apart from in this south corner here. This is the only bit of land I could see, which is the slope of the Pentland Hills coming down here. And I calculated this is where the winter solstice sun would set, just coming down that slope of the hill. So that was the direction I decided we were going to line the labyrinth to. And here's the energy lay that I dowsed. And I knew about this. It emanates from Arthur's Seat, which is an old volcanic plug in the middle of Edinburgh, big hill. If you've been there, you'll know it. And it runs through to the hills above Glasgow on the west coast. The blind spring was over here. It wasn't under where the labyrinth wanted to be. But I knew it would eventually get there. So I sited the labyrinth there and we built it. And sure enough, the blind spring did eventually move, and it's now under the center of the labyrinth. I can't douse it over here at all. It's over here. So it's a very powerful labyrinth. I mean, I actually find myself leaning towards the middle when I'm actually walking it. And here's a picture of the energy lay when I actually plotted these energy lays in Google Earth some years after doing this labyrinth. I was amazed to find it actually runs right through the center. So my dowsing is pretty spot on with that. And here's a picture of the opening ceremony of the labyrinth. Of course, they don't always have to be permanent labyrinths. Here's a temporary one I did for the BSD's 75th anniversary conference, laid out in ribbon, colored ribbon to represent the chakras. And again, a little special trefoil design in the middle. This is one I made in Italy for a retreat center called Mandali. And their logo is this flower of life here. And I wanted to try and incorporate this in the labyrinth in some way. So I thought if we could get a millstone, we could have the logo painted on it or engraved on it. And I reasoned by putting the millstone and opening out the labyrinth along the center line here, I could get this rather interesting flowing form going. And again, because it's a retreat center with lots of people, we wanted a processional one. So we have a exit from the center so they can go back in again. This is the construction drawing. Obviously, I need to do some fairly serious geometry here to get everything to line up properly. We had a little temporary mark out on the beach in Scotland before we went. And here's the mark out on the site in Mandali. Now, this is a Madonna statue at the side here, which will come into significance later on. There's an energy lay coming through that, right through the center of the labyrinth. So that's what I sited it on. Here's some construction shots. This is them putting in the big stone. Some small adjustments with that. Here we are starting constructing the labyrinth with boulders, constructing the walls. It took about 4 days, all this. This is some of my astronomical alignments here. This is the February the 1st, November the 1st sunrise over the hills. And I was particularly pleased with this one. This is the spire, or the tower rather, of the village church, which marks the equinox sunset. And I didn't know that at the time when I was doing the labyrinth. I only found this out later when I was actually about to finish things. And here we are just laying the blue slate that formed the paths. Here's the finished labyrinth at sunset. And here's an aerial shot from a drone just after it was finished. Now, after we finished this, we spent a couple of days exploring the area, not having been out of the retreat centre in all that time. And we went for a walk up through the village. Here's the retreat centre here. Behind the village, there is this hill fort with this sort of triple bank and ditch enclosure here. And then the following day, we went down the hill past the Madonna statue. There is this Stations of the Cross walk down to the village. And halfway down, there is this little chapel dedicated to Mary. I plotted these on my phone with the GPS coordinates. When I got back and joined them up in Google Earth, I was amazed to find the line goes right through the center of the labyrinth, which is there. And that's the energy line that I had dowsed when I was setting out the labyrinth. And that's why you should have a geomancer when you're building your sacred spaces. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much for that. Here's where you can find me. My website is Western Geomancy. I'm on Facebook at Scott Dowser, Twitter at GrumGeo. And I can stop sharing the screen now if I can find where the stop sharing button is. There we go. So, how are we doing for time?
Let's say thank you, Greg.
Yeah. So last but very much not least, we have the wonderful Patrick MacManaway, another past president of the British Society of Dowsers, international earth healer. Patrick does a lot of what we're calling earth whispering. He works a lot with landscape, both in Britain, America, and Australia most recently. And he's currently coming to us from Vermont. Patrick, over to you.
Graham, everybody, thank you. This is just absolute pleasure to hear you all sharing your stories. I am going to share in 10 minutes. Hang on a minute. Not that. Something's not right about that. I beg your pardon. I thought I was set up, but I'm not. Give me 2 seconds.
It was all going so well.
All going so well.
Take your time.
Better. There we go. Play from start and share screen. Share screen. That one. Yes, so thanks so much for including me. Stories. This is a lovely set of stories. I'm going to tell you about a story of talking to a crop of alfalfa in terms of plant communications and how we engage our awareness, consciousness, skills, vibrational intelligence into the everyday to make sure we've got food to eat. So this story happens on account of our being vibrational beings in relationship with a vibrational planet. And there we have Manna's apple. But here we want to speak of human as interactive intelligence, ultimately of every part of the ecosystem, all parts of intelligence. This is a story of talking to one crop. So in approaching landscape as dowsers, as shamanic awareness people, always first to address healing of hurts and then to communicate what it is that we're up to before we proceed to anything that exaggerates or enhances, because it's really all about relationship ultimately. And so we need to have happy dragons in our landscape, and we need to have happy elementals in our landscape, happy fairies and nature spirits, and happy plants. So this story takes place in the Cotswolds of Gloucestershire, and we're on a dairy farm small family dairy farm, only 20 milking cows, milked once a day, value added into award-winning cheese and retail sales in farm shop in local community. And various stories from working on this farm over several years, including their getting Best Farm in Gloucestershire award on 2 occasions sequentially. But the story we want to look at is this alfalfa issue here. So here we have dairy cows, and the cows in this story, it's October and they've got 2 fields left of green forage before they go on to winter dry feed until the spring comes again. So alfalfa is a highly nitrogenous nutritional crop, but it can create terrible problems in cattle, a condition called bloating. So here is the alfalfa in its glory, but a cow has multiple stomachs, and if it can't digest what's in the middle of them, then it can get seriously sick, and the gases from the high nitrogen can create a terrible problem where the cows literally die from this condition called bloat, where their digestion stops and they're no longer able to properly breathe, in fact. So said farm, 2 fields of alfalfa, cows grazed in strips in a high density mode across the first field, all was well. They moved into the second field, and immediately on the first strip, 7 out of 20 of them showed these deathly signs of bloat, even though same crop, same day, planting, same operator, same seed, no difference. So something energetically clearly different between field number 1, field number 2. Field number 1, cows are healthy and happy. Field number 2, immediately showing signs of lethal food poisoning, basically. So they asked me to come and have a chat with the field, which I did, and bringing in the sorry, I'm moving ahead in my slides. Let me just rewind and say, so plants being indigestible to animals is a universal. So in South Africa, giraffes have to sneak up and stalk acacia trees from downwind and get a nibble in quick before the tree realizes what they're doing. Because once the tree recognizes that they're being browsed, they instantly fill their leaves with tannins, which are disgusting and indigestible to the giraffes concerned. And then the trees tell each other all about that, and so the giraffe has to literally go and sneak up and stalk downwind another set of trees in order to have a graze. So clearly this is what had happened with this alfalfa crop. The first field had recognized conceptually, energetically, vibrationally, consciously that it was part of a rotating agricultural system, that it was planted to be yummy food for cows that were then going to make milk, going to make cheese, and then would be replanted in its successional rotation. Second field thought that it was being wildly predated by unknown herbivores and had mobilized this literally lethally toxic secondary metabolite response to keep them away. So this happened, they called me, I showed up on the farm, and I sat and had a good old meditating douse in the field, literally, with the crops. And included in my consciousness as one does, the pure sort of spirit of coherence. And so I was speaking in my mind to spirit of the farm, spirit of the field, spirit of the crop, spirit of the cows, spirit of nature, goddess Bridget, good with cows, so she was definitely included. And a round circle conversation occurs then in the imaginal space, and explained to this crop that in fact it had been planted in an agricultural process with love, with gratitude, but in order to be nutritional to these cows that were then going to be for milk, for cheese, for people, and it would be replanted. And once it got that, the conversation in the mind reached a point of coherence and harmony and attunement. The plant understood what the ask was, why it had been planted, what its job was, and we left it there. And 12 hours later, John put his cows back into the field, and in fact, indeed, they were able to graze the whole of the rest of the field over the next 10 days without any further indigestion or injury. And so we take from that a discord in the landscape, in this case in an agricultural system, motivated the plant to make itself hostile and indigestible. The communication of telepathy was heard by the plant, was understood by the plant, was in its capacity to change its metabolism, its expressed physiology in order for our convenience, and did so. And it's a lovely story, but I think it's also just one to reflect on how much of our food is grown in a way where we communicate with the plants to the extent that they understand, cooperate, participate, allow themselves, make themselves optimally nutritious, versus how much of the food in our food chain, in fact, is being grown in a way that the plants don't understand really what's going on and aren't in concord, and deliberately mobilize toxicity towards their host. So that's a story to say, bless your food, a point of plate. If you're a gardener or a grower, be sure and bless the gnomes and fairies and the dragons, and make sure that everybody knows what the job is and that everybody's on the same team.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Patrick.
Lovely.
Wonderful story. So everything is connected. That brings us to the end of our speakers, and we still have a couple of minutes on Patrick's time there, so I'll just fill in for another minute. No, I'd like to give thanks to everybody for showing up tonight, to Jim and to David, Patrick and Susan McNeill Spuhler. We will put a link to this, once we get the recording, we'll actually put a YouTube video on the Facebook page for those people who have missed this, so you can send the link to the page. People will be able to come and see this. And we will also put the handouts on that link, or somewhere else with a link so you can get the handouts. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and if you have any comments, do please add them underneath, and maybe we might respond to them. So thanks to everybody who's watched us, and thanks again to everybody who's joined. So with that, we shall bid you farewell.
Thank you.